to the event, President Moon Jae-in held a string of one-on-ones with each leader representing the ASEAN region. The president's discussions with the ASEAN leaders drew up a blueprint for future cooperation between South Korea and each ASEAN member state. On the sidelines, a number of special events were also held, including the ASEAN-Korea CEO Summit and the Korea Grand Sourcing Fair on the economic side of things, as well as those related to business, startups, and smart cities, where the participants envisioned a future of innovation. There were also a number of cultural events on K-beauty, fashion, and food. Meanwhile, the first ever Mekong Korea Summit was also held in the city of Busan, hot on the heels of the ASEAN-Korea Commemorative Summit. The Mekong Korea Summit is the first such meeting between the two parties, having been recently elevated to a summit-level gathering. Various means of cooperation were discussed at the meeting in the hopes of achieving a miracle on the Mekong, akin to the miracle on the Han River that refers to South Korea's period of rapid economic growth starting in the 1960s. The ASEAN Republic of Korea Commemorative Summit was the largest international conference hosted by the country since President Moon Jae-in was sworn into office. A meaningful event providing the opportunity to look back at the last 30 years of South Korea-ASEAN relations while mapping out the future of ties in the coming 30 years. Hello and welcome to a special edition of the discussion session on this last day and final day of the consecutive summit meetings. It's the South Korea-ASEAN Peace and Prosperity for the People. Under the theme of the Partnership for Peace, Prosperity for the People, all 10 leaders of the ASEAN bloc and President Moon Jae-in of South Korea gathered here in Busan to take part in the 2019 ASEAN ROK Commemorative Summit and the first Mekong ROK Summit. And today we will be looking beyond some of the agreements made during the summit events and to wrap up that past 2.5 days of the diplomacy-charged moments here in Busan. And as we all witnessed before our eyes, the ASEAN bloc and South Korea together opened up a new chapter of strategic partnership by agreeing the people-centered vision of the co-prosperity. And to help us look beyond that summit events, to my right is the Secretary General of ASEAN Korea Center, the Lee-hyuk, Ambassador Lee-hyuk, and to my left is Professor Park Jang-sik, a director at the Institute of ASEAN Studies of Donga University. And I am Shin Se-min, a presidential correspondent at Arirang TV. And without further ado, let's get right to it. President Moon Jae-in had toured all 10 ASEAN member states before hosting this week's summit events with all 10 ASEAN leaders. And that's because he wanted to keep the promise with the member states. And if you were to look back, the summit event already seems to be a very important issue for the South Korean government in the new Southern policy.
Yes.
How would you evaluate this week's summit events?
Well, I think this special summit meeting was very successful in solidifying ASEAN's position as Korea's indispensable partner in all areas of political, economic, and social culture. If you look at the joint vision statement of the 11 leaders, it clearly shows their commitment to elevate the partnership between ASEAN and Korea to a new level towards a community of peace and prosperity centered on our peoples, actually. So, in a nutshell, it clearly laid down the groundwork and blueprint for the next 30 years of brighter, much more cooperation and exchanges between the two sides. And of course, our best days of ASEAN-Korea relationship are ahead of us. I think much has been achieved through this special commemorative summit meeting.
Professor, how would you evaluate this week's summit?
Of course, I do really agree with Ambassador Lee's ideas. So, unlike last time, the second ASEAN-Korea commemorative summit, so this time, so we have prepared a lot of programs and events to show our full capacity of Korean people, and especially, so throughout the 3 days or almost for a week, so we can find out some the festivals, and then a lot of events around the Busan city. So of course, I am so Busan citizen. I'm so proud of to have this the biggest event in Busan city. Of course, Busan city is really famous throughout the Southeast Asian countries.
And I think everybody can agree that with the backdrop of new Southern policy under the Moon administration, the way that South Korean government is approaching the ASEAN member states is much different from how it's been doing diplomacy with the four major powers, the US, China, Japan, and Russia.
Yes.
How should South Korea position itself in that?
Well, South Korea has a very special place in ASEAN, actually. Well, as you know very well, South Korea has actually challenges in dealing with four major powers, diplomatically, economically, and politically. So I think it is against this backdrop that the President Moon Jae-in unveiled his initiative of New Southern Policy, because it's really a very important time for Korean government to diversify our diplomacy. So in that sense, together with big major powers, ASEAN is the most important countries in placing our top priority to pursue our national interest. So in that sense, I think it's this special commemorative meeting was very important, and also this summit meeting was about the future, actually. So there were much emphasis was placed on actually future industry and future generations, such as startups, young entrepreneurs, digital economies, smart cities, and scholarship, and so on. So I think we strongly sent a signal through this special event that our future is ASEAN's future, and ASEAN's dream is Korea's dream. So we grow together and we suffer together.
And that's probably what the ASEAN member states had all shared during the
yes.
summit events. How would you say South Korea should position itself?
Yeah, actually, among four powers centering around the Korean Peninsula, so except Russia and United States. So I'd like to refer to especially two nations, China and Japan. So I guess both nations can be compared to the heavyweight players in boxing. So frankly speaking, so we are in lightweight player. So in comparison with the population, national income, and the size of land. So I think we have so many gaps prepare so many jabs.
So many punches.
Yeah, no punchy.
Yes.
We can
Preparations for
have a
punches.
one punchy to knock down counterpart. So instead of that, we have to prepare so many jabs. You know, small but very active
Influential.
plans to cope with ASEAN 10 nations. So that is our great advantage, not to be competed with other nations. So and then, so we have to prepare so many jabs with grounded experience. We have so many experts in ASEAN states. So and then small but very effective jabs to be prepared.
But as Professor pointed out, right.
Let
go
me
ahead.
add to what Professor Bach said. Actually, if you look at the ASEAN-Korea relationship, Korea has not, unlike major powers, Korea does not have ulterior motives and historical baggages. So we have advantage in that sense, actually. So I think Korea and almost all the ASEAN nations suffered from colonialism. So we can much more easily empathize with each other. And on top of them, we have a great soft power represented by the Korean wave. Korean culture, Korean film, Korean drama, Korean songs, actually.
Right.
So, so in that area, we have much more competitive edge compared to surrounding nations such as Japan and China.
I think you've delved into that moment. I mean, as Professor and
Yeah,
Ambassador
yeah.
Lee had pointed out, the way we do
Yeah.
diplomacy
Yeah.
with other major powers is
Yeah.
much more different from the ASEAN bloc.
Yeah.
But if you look into the ASEAN blocs and its history of
Yeah.
diplomacy with
Yes,
other
yeah,
countries, Japan and China had made their ways into the ASEAN bloc before South Korea. How should we differentiate South Korean government's role from other two parties?
Well, I think Korea has a special role to play because Korea, Korea overcame the colonialism and war, of course, Korean War, and moved forward to become to become a very strong industrial nation, actually. So, so ASEAN actually can look to Korea as a role model to emulate. So, so we have actually we have made many programs with ASEAN countries in sharing knowledges on how Korea developed so fast during such a short period of time. So that is the very strong advantage of Korea, actually, in differentiating with the major powers such as China and Japan.
He mentioned the historical empathy that the two sides can share. What's your take? How
Yeah.
should South Korea differentiate?
Ambassador Lee emphasized on the economic cooperation with each other. So, in fact, probably without money, economic advantages, so we can enter into the deep side of ASEAN styles. So, but I'm a little bit deviated from the main idea of Ambassador Lee. So we are emphasizing on the people. So from the
People-centered.
do certain polish.
Right.
So we are emphasizing on the 3 P's, So people, prosperity, and peace, So why people is put into in the first place? So mostly we are emphasizing prosperity for economic development and peace for the political security problem. But mainly, people comes to the lastly for the socio-cultural exchange. So, but we put it the people in the first place from the President Moon's government. So this is because we are excellent in expressing our cultural, artistic exchange, especially tourism. We are very kind of advantages in developing cultural exchange. So yesterday I thought about the beauty of Korean women. So from the drama and movies,
To
the
culture of
Southeast
the-
Asian people so want to have such kind of a beauty like a Korean woman. So they like to exchange. They are eager to enjoy the K-pop and music, and including BTS. So we have to concentrate on the culture, social cultural exchange. That is our great advantage among three Ps.
And before we jump into another topic, I just want to delve into a North Korea issue. I mean, President Moon Jae-in had also said that and called on the ASEAN leaders to send a united message to the denuclearization process between North Korea and the U.S. But it was a no-show from the North Korean side to this year's event. How should the ASEAN bloc and South Korea, along with sending a united message, delve into the denuclearization issue with North Korea? Briefly.
Well, ASEAN and Korea have always been sending united messages to North Korea, just denuclearize and open up its society. That has been our consistent message to North Korea, actually. But you know, all the 10 ASEAN nations have diplomatic relations with North Korea. And in that sense, North Korea has some kind of comfort level in dealing with South ASEAN nations, actually. So, and also, you know, if you look at the one member nation from ASEAN nations, Vietnam opening up and reform has begun only 33 years ago, but it has been consistently growing economically. So it has a very thriving economy now. So, and at the same time maintaining the political stability. So North Korea, Vietnam can serve as a role model for North Korea to emulate, actually. So in that sense, our partnership with South Korea is very important in sending a message to North Korea.
I mean, we can't stress enough how important the denuclearization issue is in furthering the President Moon's new Southern policy. But we can't also leave out the economic obligation when talking about diplomacy with another state. And for that, I want to focus in on the money. Under the theme of the new Southern policy and doing business with the ASEAN bloc, the business relations between Asia's fourth largest industry and the home to the world's third largest population, the ASEAN bloc, seems ever more crucial. And I just want to focus on South Korea's place in the ASEAN bloc and the Mekong countries. There's a lot of the opportunities for South Korean businesses to enter the Mekong business. Where does South Korea's economy stand in terms of business levels, constructions on the back of overflowing minerals and resources? Professor.
Yeah, we are entering the first stage of a Mekong development projects. So actually, China and Japan have tried to establish their relations with, so especially mainland Southeast Asia. So Mekong River flows from China throughout the mainland Southeast Asia to the Mekong Delta of Vietnam. So coincidentally, So the river flows all 5 nations of mainland Southeast Asia. So this is a Mekong. So the problem is the Mekong River is not the main target of the projects. So, but to develop all the 5 mainland Southeast Asian nations. So I guess China and Japan are very reluctant to be entered by the Korean government because they have already established the foundation of developing such a mainland Southeast Asian nations. But so as we enter the Mekong projects, so from this time, this is the first summit, we are entering into that. So mostly all the projects are led by Thailand. Thailand is somewhat deviated from the CLMV. We call it Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam. Those groups are a little bit developing countries rather than all the 10 nations. So the Thailand has been supported by Japan. Of course, the other countries have been supported by Chinese government. So we are doing in that area. So for the higher technology, and then the agriculture developing projects. So we can deal with the very, as I told before, we have so many jobs, you know, effective, small but very concrete plans. So we can share with such kind of neglected by the 2 countries.
Right. And as Professor had pointed out, the business level and the relations between the ASEAN bloc and South Korea stands very strong on the backdrop of the cultural ties and the food and all the other people-to-people exchanges that had been already developed. What's your take, Ambassador?
Well, ASEAN is Korea's 2nd largest trading partner, and ASEAN is Korea's 3rd largest investment destination. So, but you know, at the end of the day, it's economy that can cement the partnership and exchanges between the 2 sides. So, in that sense, ASEAN is very important for the Korean economy, and it will get more and more important as ASEAN is growing very fast at the annual rate at about 5%. So in that sense, we have a lot of work to do in furthering our economic presence in ASEAN nations. Well, Japan and China have already a very strong economic presence in ASEAN nations, but we have a role to play. We have a lot of, so Korea and ASEAN has a lot of potential for further enhancing our economic partnership in many areas, such as startups, creative industries, and smart cities, and etc. So it is not only important but imperative for Korea to work very hard in expanding our economic relations with ASEAN nations.
But culture and food is something that the government cannot be the leader in linking up the 2 states. Any role that the South Korean government should play in perhaps driving up and speeding up that and enhancing that ties with ASEAN bloc?
Yeah, sure. So I think we can do the best in the field of culture and arts. So we are a very small country, but we have excellent cultural artist performance already. So as you may see, the classical music, we have worldwide famous players,
Right.
pianists, violinists, and painters. And then even in the cultural pop world, we have a BTS,
Right.
right? So we can imagine that now current situation of culture and arts. So all the world admit South Koreans to be excellent in their field. So we have to speed up and promote such programs and cultural and artist projects will impact, give an impact on the ASEAN peoples. So and that they remind all the Korean things. So without any economic, political situations, we give a great effects to the ASEAN people's soul and mind. That is a very important thing to develop for the future between ASEAN and Korean relations.
It
And
has-
briefly, yes, your
it
take.
has been proven already that Korea has beaten China and Japan actually
On the cultural exchanges?
in cultural area actually. So, I think it is almost a miracle, for Korean entertainment industry to beat strong competitors such as Japan and China, in attracting so many, love among ASEAN nations. So Korean wave has become become a part of daily lives in many Southeast Asian peoples actually. So, but I think there is a great potential for furthering our furthering Korean wave. If there are so many efforts are being made already. In the area of co-producing, dramas and films and songs with ASEAN partners.
Right.
Actually. So, and Korean Wave actually helps a lot our Korean companies, in their foray into ASEAN markets. So thanks to Korean culture, I think ASEAN people like the Korean, smartphones, Korean electronic appliances more than than the products from other countries.
I think we cannot stress enough how the ties between the ASEAN bloc and South Korea stands on top of the government level with the people-to-people exchanges.
Yes.
As much as we would like to further our discussion on this day, I believe the time given to us on this special discussion session has come to an end. Once again, I would like to greatly appreciate our panelists for the day. To my right, again, the Secretary General Lee Hyuk of the ASEAN Korea Center, and to my left, the Director and Professor Park Jang-sik of
you so
the
much.
Institute of ASEAN Studies at Donga University. Now, that will do it for us on this special discussion on the last and third day of the consecutive summits. Thank you again for joining us, and goodbye.
BizSmart sheds light on the advanced technologies and improved competitiveness of domestic startups which have achieved remarkable growth as global businesses. This week on BizSmart, we introduced FG Beauty, which has produced premium beauty products with Eastern prickly pear extract. Also, we look into Basecamp Korea, a manufacturer of industrial safety supplies, which has developed a mask that can be used semi-permanently. And we explore Yetfarm, a company that has developed pigment-free, preservative-free, and paraffin-free ice clean sheet based on its own hydrogel technology. Be sure to tune in and join us.